there's something that you can't ignore about this movie, and that it is all women. The only men in this movie are absent. They are there for a moment and they're like, I'm going on vacation. Bye. And they leave their child to die in a horror house. Or they are they're dead. There's the soldier that's dead. Or they are completely inept. So there are parts of the film where they show kind of like actual literal scenes where one of the girls is fantasizing, and that's her name, fantasy. That's just another part of this movie that's I don't know if I can even truly deconstruct what that is, but they're kind of like these seven dwarf characters where each one of them has the name of the dominant aspect of their personality. So there's fantasy, sweet, prof, which is like professor, kung fu, and so on. So one of the girls, fantasy, fantasizes about being rescued by a knight on a white horse. And the movie kind of does this really cool thing, which I like about this, where they do these little mini movies within the movie. There's a bunch of animation, there's all these different styles of filming, and I think that's like, it does a really good job of keeping you awake for sure. And so you have that one character, fantasy, that she is expecting to be saved by the teacher. And that teacher is the definition of a fool. He falls down and gets his ass stuck in a bucket. Children are mocking him. He can't get to them to save them. He stops to have lunch. Then the other men that are shown throughout the film, they're drunk, they're useless, or in the case of the aunt's fiance, dead. So there's a really glaring statement here somewhere, and I think it's kind of this idea of, so you have the girls. It's a very much a coming of age movie. These are like about pubescent girls. You have scenes with blood, which allusions to like first menstruation. You have like this very like girlish, like giggling and things like this. And so it's like these very young girls, but at the same time, this idea of like, one of the girls is experimenting with putting on makeup, putting on the red lipstick and stuff like this. You have this idea of girlhood transitioning to womanhood, but this is a process that's taking place in a new world. And I really like to, as I was watching this movie, what came to mind was Jenny Holzer's, one of her truisms, which is, she would have these, like, she had these texts that she would place in random places. The most famous one is "Abuse of power comes as no surprise." But there's another one that's actually, there's a picture of Nirvana standing in front of one of them, and it's "Men don't protect you anymore." And as I was watching this film, that one came into my head, because this film is essentially Jenny Holzer's truism quote: "Men don't protect you anymore." And these girls are waiting. They keep expecting. They say, "We'll call the police. The teacher's going to come save us. We should go with your father. He's so cool. We can go to his vacation place." In the entire film, no man comes to save any one of the girls. And even the aunt is essentially waiting on a man, and that essentially turns her into a cannibalistic demon. So there's kind of this element that men don't protect you anymore. And now that's an interesting thing to understand with post-war Japan, because the best man, essentially the archetypal man in this film, is the dead soldier. He's shown as the truly manly man. And there's one part of the film where one of the girls says, "Men were so manly then." Very blatantly saying men are different now. And you kind of had this idea of what it does to a nation's men to lose a war. And so you have this change in men. You have men that are just kind of like, they don't hold that role anymore of being a protector. They failed to protect their country, essentially.
It's complicated. I don't think. Yeah, it's something that I saw in the movie and that I pointed out and we discussed a little bit before, but I think it's really difficult for us to understand the scale of destruction of World War II.
Yeah, the director lived through that. He actually was born in Hiroshima, and he lost friends to the bombing. So this is another important part of this movie. There is even a one frame of the movie that shows the mushroom cloud. So the the destruction and the leftover, the remnants of that loss and destruction is a major theme in this movie.
You have to remember, after World War II, the American occupation, and up until today and until very recently, Japan has been, I may be not exactly right, but basically a pacifist country. It hasn't been allowed to or has accepted that they would not have a standing military. And they do have security forces and stuff like that. And there is geopolitical things that are happening now that may result in some of that changing. But for 70 years, they have been a pacifist country. So in America, we've also kept having wars over and over again. And we have men come back from wars that aren't won or lost. I don't know. I mean, you can't even...
Yeah.
There's not a definitive end, and there's not a...
definitive beginning. Yeah.
Right. But... So I can't say that there is an exact parallel because, again, we're talking about in World War II a scale of destruction that's different.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I think that it does. I think that probably war itself has an impact on. And again, of course, now I know that it's not just men that fight in the military today, but that's a fairly recent development.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been relevant to this movie.
Not much in World War II, no.
And I think, I wonder if there is something to that symbolically in a way, to have a country to lose a war and then to essentially be disarmed as almost like the country itself becomes impotent. You know, it becomes like this toothless country, especially considering Japan was an imperial force and was actually truly a force to be reckoned with for a part of history. Did its own fair share of damage and destruction to other countries, and then suddenly became this kind of declawed nation, and by force is what the interesting thing is here. And I wonder if there's kind of this, in this movie, this sense of how can I say, like a demasculinization of this nation, because I mean, to be forcibly disarmed is a really interesting thing for a once militaristic country to go through.
And there's a couple, yeah. I mean, it's really complicated because, and I tried to look into some of this, but I could only find scholarly articles that were difficult. Trying to see the difference between that radical shift in militarism, and then into a country that is more pacifist than most countries ever are. It wasn't just, it wasn't a subtle thing. And then we also have to remember that, the war ending in 2 nuclear bombs, that didn't just kill men, that mainly killed civilians. So it's this isn't to say that the death toll was somehow only upon men, but in terms of the actual armed forces of Japan, it was. And so I'd read it recently, a book called Artist of the Floating World, Artist of the Floating World, which deals with a kind of propaganda artist in World War II Japan, and then how he's living life after the war. And he has this kind of, it's really a pretty good book. Kazuo Ishiguro, I think, is the name. I think he lives in Britain. But anyway, it's a vast topic. I just noticed when I watched this movie, there's basically 2 men. There's the father, who has recently. This is difficult because, there are admirable qualities about what occurred after not being a militaristic country. But you see this. So you see the father. Remember, he comes back, I believe, from Italy. He's just come back from Italy. He's a photographer, right?
No, and he's a film music composer.
Okay.
Yeah, and but same difference.
So you see this male and this man in the film trying to, after the war, it looks like, kind of, I could be wrong, but it looks like he's essentially, his wife is dead, and now he's taken a Western wife, I think. She's kind of just white, isn't she? Or Italian or something? I don't know. I mean, it's a little, it's hard to say, but kind of, right? She definitely has a Western feel to it. So there's that.
Yeah, she's Westernized. I don't think she's white because her name is Ryoko. So I don't think she's actually white. She does look Westernized though.
Right, and he met her in Italy. I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, so, and then the other man is, you call him a teacher, but I don't think he's a teacher. I think he's just like
he's their teacher.
He's like a bus driver, isn't he? He's like a bus driver.
Oh, well, maybe he's the bus driver of the school, yeah.
Right, because the teacher is actually a woman. At the very
that
beginning,
he's marrying.
I don't know if he's not marrying her. There's a scene at the very beginning, where they get out of class, and it's like, oh, we're going on summer vacation, which is another theme of a lot of horror movies, by the way, summer vacation. But I don't get into that. Anyway, and she and one of the main lead actress talks to her teacher, and she's like, oh, there's a hot wind going through here, and then it's like, oh, well, that's a reference to atomic bombs. But I don't think she's marrying the guy that I kind of just assumed is kind of like a he seems to be kind of a
is.
Okay, well. Perhaps,
I think that's why it's so funny, because like I again it's this inept figure, and you have this woman that she's the teacher is, they look up to her, and they're like, oh, it's for love, it's so nice, and it's it's supposed to be this wonderful thing, and then you meet the man and he's a clown. He's like a total buffoon. And so it's this, I think again it's this, you can't rely on men in this film. Like that's the overall message, is that even not the overall message, but in this
it's a big
for
theme.
This theme, it is a massive theme.
It is a big
for sure.
theme. I don't know. It's so funny because when I'm not actually recording a podcast, I'm not as careful about what I want to say or what I want to think. But then as I do it, I do want to be careful because I don't know.
You don't want to be fake news.
I don't know. I don't want to be fake news. And I don't know enough about that. It's something that I wanted to research more. But I will suggest for viewers, if they read Artists of a Floating World. And then also there is a early movie by Akira Kurosawa called Stray Dogs, I think. I'll check that. But that's about... it's actually really good. That is a kind of a murder mystery right after the war, and it shows Japan right after the war. It's actually really, really good. I like all of his movies, pretty much.
Yeah, he's good.
Let me make sure that I'm not misleading people, and you can go ahead. Oh, the power of the internet is fast. This is also a Criterion Collection film.
Oh, well, yeah, Kurosawa.
Explores the mood of Japan during its painful post-war recovery. Yeah, and this was done in 1949. So the thing that was good about this movie is like it actually was filmed, not long after the war. So Stray Dog is the film. Nora Inu. My Japanese language skills rocking out. But anyway, yeah, I saw that theme in the film. I think it's real. I don't know how real it is. The teacher ends up as a pile of bananas. And if you want to get into psycho stuff, which I know you like to do, this psychology, it's a big old pile of dicks. That's what he is. Let's just be honest. He turns into a big old pile of banana dicks.
That's funny. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting, because there's also a weird editing there where he sees this old, like this fat drunk guy, and the guy's like, the girls have been eaten. And he's like, what fruit do you like? And the guy's like, bananas, and then the guy turns into like a crazy little skull with steam coming out for some reason, and the guy like freaks out and runs away. He's like, bananas, and then he's like in the car and just kind of falls asleep, and they do like a replay, like I think 3 or 4 times the same little clip of him being like, bananas, and it's like he's almost like an idiot monkey. Like it is kind of this, the men in the film are either absent, dead, or completely ridiculous.
And he is the one that the one Japanese girl fantasizes about as being the kind of the white knight that comes in riding on the horse.
They even
and all
say
kind of
that.
Stuff. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the thing that I think is really interesting about this movie is that it's essentially coming of age in a different age. So once upon a time, a young girl could imagine her white knight. No longer is that true for post-war Japan because all your men have either died, valiantly in this war. They are westernized and, they're leaving behind the previous Japan, or they're the victims of the war, essentially. They are the losers. They are the damaged, the leftover goods, essentially. You have like these men that are drunk or completely unconcerned with the women that he's supposed to be going to help and take care of, essentially, as, the adult man. So I think that's a really important theme in this film. And it's something to consider, the role of men in a society, because I think that that's something that's changing rapidly. Because even as we have this discussion now, it's not very sympathetic. What are we going to say here? Like, bring back war? That's the idea of war being something that makes men men, or, that losing a war makes men not men. These are, these kind of archaic ideas that you can't even really argue for without putting massive disclaimers on them. And it's not, to say that, we need war, we can't have healthy men. That's obviously not necessary. That's not the point here. But there is a shift in the role of men, because war, for basically ever, not necessarily organized war, but men as protector, men as fighter, this was the ancient role of man. And now, as you have a world that shifts away from men having that role, and forcibly in the case of Japan, or, even if you want to talk about, if you want to translate this a little bit into modern day American or Western world, men as protector is not really, doesn't resonate anymore. Protector from what? From other men? From the man down the street? There are no foreigners coming in that you have to be defended from. There are no predators roving the nature that have to be fought off. So you have these kind of men have a new role in society, and I think that's really something that we haven't entirely grappled with. I think, in a way, part of that role has shifted to be, the power that once came from might now is from success and wealth and accomplishment. And so that, and you see that is what is seen as the powerful man. Like, the man that is successful and wealthy and accomplished is essentially the dominant man, the manly man. Not necessarily the man that goes into the street and fights people. This is like the old man, that it's no longer the role of men in society.